Rev up your engines!
There's these guys called IC Cars, and they've crunched a bunch of data, and they found out that there isn't a single American car in the top 15 list of cars that people are going to keep for 15 years. When I was a young mechanic, Japanese were bringing cars out like mad, and people said, I don't want that Jap crap. Horrible cars, cheap little junky little cars. Well, what a shocker. They kept making them better and better and better. They've taken over the market of reliability. I remember years ago, I was talking to an executive, and he said, Scotty, people can say whatever they want, but we Americans, he was an American, cannot compete with the Japanese quality. It's just our setup is different. He said, we're thinking the next quarter stock, got to make it for the next quarter to make it look good so the stockholders are happy and the stock stays up. Japanese, 10, 15, 20 years down the line. And it's paid off for him, Let's just face it, they make higher quality vehicles. And he knew that decades ago. And he was an American executive. He just understood both systems, and he was honest to me about it. Of course, back then I wasn't a car talk guy. I was just a mechanic, Somebody like me, I was just some guy fixing cars, Well, now I tell the world about stuff, so I get to tell you the truth about all these things. And the real truth is sad but true that there are no American cars on the top 15 list of cars people are going to keep more than 15 years. They don't hold up like they used to. Back in the day, in the 60s, we had cars that were 20 years old in the driveway that were American cars that we took care of. And they kept running, but planned obsolescence, overuse of plastic. And here's a sticker for just about everybody out there. With the overuse of plastic and electronics, a lot of cars aren't going to be around 15 years from now because they're going to be electronic nightmares. Plastic's going to crack, and that's going to stay true for a lot of manufacturers, including some of the Japanese. I see the stuff coming out now, a lot more plastic, a lot more computer stuff. So I doubt that there's going to be that many people around driving even 15-year-old Japanese vehicles 2035. They're just philosophies even with the Japanese now. They're realizing you got to make money. There's a little more planned obsolescence than there used to be, and a lot more plastic. Everybody knows electronics are eventually going to break down, and they're going to be really complicated to figure out. Mark DJ says, Scotty, I live in Canada where it's minus 40 C right now. My 2007 Dodge minivan has 270,000 kilometers and loud whirring sound. Help. Okay. It gets that cold. Whirring is often bearings. Its bearings are making noise. They're cold. Now, if you find as soon as it warms up, it stops making it, don't worry about it. If a bearing goes up, it's going to break. Let's say it's your alternator that's whirring. And if it goes away when it warms up, it's not going to hurt anything. But if it keeps whirring and the bearing breaks, well, then the alternator is going to break and the belt will fall off and you can't drive the car anymore. If you really are worried, you're not going to be working it outside at that temperature. Only a madman, even I wouldn't do that. When I lived up in Niagara Falls, it was my father's garage. It was a 3-bay Texaco gas station with heat. We had a big gas burner that you could put used motor oil in. We would keep it hot in there. We had all that old oil. You had to do something with it. Might as well burn it. We'd work on them in the winter inside. Take it inside and let somebody check it out with their listening devices. And I mean, if it is whirring really badly and you see it's the alternator or the water pump, better to change it now than later so it doesn't strand you somewhere when it's minus 40 and you're stuck out in the prairies of Alberta and you freeze to death. Alex S. says, besides changing the oil, is there anything I should do to a car that hasn't had oil changed in a long time? If it's really dirty, get yourself a can of engine flush. I like the K&W engine flush. It comes in a quart can. It has the directions on the back, which are basically you pour it in the engine and idle it for like 5-10 minutes, and then you drain it all out, and then you change the oil and filter. And that'll help get any big crud that's built up inside. Now, you don't want to do this all the time with a car, and you never want to do it with a car that you change the oil regularly because the oil's clean, and it can actually clean things too clean. And if they clean the pistons too clean, sometimes they'll start burning some oil. But if it really hasn't been changed in a long time, I'd advise putting a flush in and follow the directions on that before you change it the first time. Sean Doyle says, my 96 Camry starts then dies. What's the problem? Okay, if it starts right up and then it dies. It starts right up and it dies. The first thing you want to check for is vacuum leaks. A lot of times a vacuum line will come off the intake and it'll suck air and then it won't start because it's sucking so much air. It's got too much air, not enough fuel, and it won't run. Check that first. That's the most common thing on that. Now, it could be your fuel pump's going out and it pumps a little bit to start it, but then when it needs more to run it, it doesn't have enough. It could be your ignition system is starting to go out. There are a lot of things. That is a 1996 Camry. You're going so far back, it's got a distributor on it. And eventually the distributors go out. If you put a spark checker on it, you see it starts on it as spark and then it stops having spark. Place the distributor, could be that. But from my experience, stuff in a vacuum line is falling off, especially the PCV valve one. That sucks a lot of air when it falls off. Steve Mania says, Scotty, how can I store tires without them degrading or start rotting, you really can't. The rubber oxidizes. You can put them in a dark place, which is going to be better. Let's say you had a giant cigar humidor, or you're a wine freak and you have a big wine cellar that's all humidity and temperature controlled. You could put it in there, would help it somewhat, but there's nothing you can really put on to make them last longer. They just oxidize over time. A lot of them have a tendency of actually getting harder. So you think, no, they're going to get soft and rot. A lot of times they get harder when they rot. And then when you put them on and fill them with air, they crack, or when you try to take off, they spin because they're so hard. They drag and they don't grip on the road. So it's not a good idea to store them for years. Use them or sell them to somebody, because odds are if they sit for years and years and years, they're not going to be any good when you want to put them on years later. Rush here says, can my dad's 02 Saturn SL manual transmission with 230,000 miles be a good daily driver? He took care of it. You got the plain 4-cylinder engine and a standard transmission. What killed most of those for my customers, other than if they got in a wreck, were the automatic transmissions going out. That's a standard transmission. They're a lot better transmissions. Go right ahead. I mean, it's got a lot of miles on it, but if you don't overheat the engine and you change your oil every 5,000 miles, I've had customers have those things last quite some time with the standard transmission. Why not? I'm assuming your father's giving it to you. Let's hope he's not a cheapskate and he's actually making you pay for the thing, 18-year-old Saturn. But if you're getting it for free, what the heck? Drive it around. Take care of it. You never know. Crystal Morris says, opinion on a Hyundai Veloster. They're cool-looking cars and they are fun to drive around, but I'm not a Hyundai fan. And the reason I'm not a Hyundai fan is because Korean cars don't hold up over time. And you can buy a brand new one. I've had customers do it, get over 100,000 miles, reasonably trouble-free, and they were happy. I've had customers that thought they were like Toyotas and Hondas and tried to get 200,000-300,000 miles out of them, and then they started to fall apart once they got over 120,000 miles on them. So it's all what you want in a car and what you want to pay for a car. They're snazzy-looking little cars, and you're going to buy a Toyota or a Honda that looks like that, you're going to pay a lot more money. So it's all what do you want to pay and what do you want to get, especially how many miles you expect to get out of it. Half Pacino says, I just changed my alternator and battery on my '01 Camry. Why is my battery light still on? The fuses are good as well as the connectors too. There's two things that generally go bad for that. You see your regular fuses. You got a special fuse hiding under the fuse box for the alternator. It's a unitized fuse. There's a bunch of them together. It takes over an hour to take it apart and get to it. Somebody could have popped that fuse and then your light will stay on. That's just what happens. And you can't see that fuse without taking a fuse box and a whole bunch of stuff apart. You might ask a mechanic to check that. Let's say take it to a guy like me just to test it. If I tested it with my machine and it said it was charging, but the battery light was on, I'd tell you to ignore it. Because that would mean you either have a minor wiring problem in the wiring harness or in the new alternator you bought. I've seen new alternators that work perfectly fine, but they didn't make the battery light go off because that particular circuit didn't work right. But when I tested the actual alternator with my fancy equipment, it said it was charging fine and the cars ran fine. They drove them years that way. But you want to check that main fuse first. To have a guy see if it's charging correctly before you do anything. And if it is, you might just live with it. If it isn't, it's probably that fuse is blown that you can't see. 3D printed says I got a 92 Lexus SC400. When the blinkers are turned on, AC fan lights dim. Any idea? Okay, well, you got an electrical problem, obviously. The first thing you want to do is have the battery and the alternator load tested. Because if the battery's weak or the alternator's weak, can make things go crazy. Once they get beyond a certain parameter of voltage, they'll do crazy things. Now, if it's not that, odds are you got some kind of a wiring problem. If you have bad ground wiring in those systems that are acting weird, it can do that. Bad ground wiring can do all kinds of stuff. What you'd want to do is get a wiring diagram for that car and check all the grounds. There'll be a page that'll show you every ground and start checking them all around those systems that are acting up. And it could be as dumb as a bolt got rusty or a connector's loose and you got to tighten it up and clean it off. I see that happen. Bad grounds will often do that because you need power and ground to make stuff work. And if the ground doesn't work, then especially when you turn another device on, it strains, it starts getting hot, all kinds of crazy stuff can go on. Power can start flowing backwards from the power to the ground. It can do all kinds of weird stuff. Matthew Fitzgerald says, coasting with a manual saves gas. Does it save where? Well, a tiny bit. Unless you live someplace in a big mountain and you glide down the mountain for 15, 20 miles, then it would actually save you quite a bit. Realize that gliding, though, is illegal. And any state that I know, it's against the law to glide in a vehicle because you don't have full control of the vehicle. The engine's not spinning full, it's just idling. All the things aren't spinning as fast as they're supposed to be, and you actually don't have the full control of a vehicle like you would when it's in gear. So I know all the states I've ever been in, it is technically illegal to glide. Now, I'm not going to tell you you're gliding, you know. It's beyond me, unless they got a spy camera in your car, but it is technically illegal to glide in cars. When I was a kid, I did it all the time. I had an Opel, my first car, and sometimes I do that, and I swear, there are times that I got 46 miles a gallon. This is back in 1969. I did it myself. I admit. I was a bad boy. Never ran into anybody, though. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.